All right, chapter 1, the willpower gap. What is the willpower gap?
So the willpower gap affects everybody. It's the gap between what we intend to execute in our lives and what we actually end up doing, right? So a lot of people approach a change in health or diet or exercise or whatever as just a problem of knowledge and motivation. Like if I'm really pumped up and then I figure out exactly what I'm going to do, I'm good to go. And, January 1st, we're going to, we're all psyched up and we're going to go do this new thing. And what they fail to factor in is the willpower gap, which is the brain is not actually wired to support you in executing that long term. As a matter of fact, our execution module, in the face of a lot of temptations, performs incredibly badly. There's a massive gap between what you're actually going to do and what your knowledge, motivation, intention, and so forth, should dictate that you would do, right? So it actually doesn't matter how intent you are on losing weight, getting healthy. It actually doesn't matter because in the moment, you're going to decide to order a pizza.
Yep.
Why does that happen? Because the anterior cingulate cortex, which is the seat of sort of resisting temptation, is like a rechargeable battery with about 15 minutes of power in it. So imagine if your phone had like 15 minutes of charge, right? Like this thing would be almost completely useless with 15 minutes of charge. And the sort of the huge gaps in how this technology would support you if it were dying after 15 minutes of good use, those gaps would be enormous. That's what we've got on board in our brain with the part of the brain that actually reins in temptations and allows us to execute our true plans, right? So I just like to share the neuroscience of that so that people understand that, first of all, that's a huge part of the reason why they've been failing to get help. And that a solution is going to look different than all the other solutions they've tried in the past. I've never come across a plan in my entire life for weight loss that factors that in a meaningful way, that actually gives you tools to bridge the willpower gap. So in the rest of the book, I give tools to bridge the willpower gap, but it's really important to understand, because the things that drain that 15-minute battery pack.
Yeah, talk about that, because I was fascinated by the things that drained, and I became very cognizant every day of, I'm draining my willpower at this point.
Totally.
Share those, because those are fascinating.
Yeah, and then we should also talk about how you know if your willpower is completely shot. So
yes.
The things that drain it are, first of all, resisting temptations is a big one, and research shows that we are resisting temptations an average of 4 hours a day, cumulative.
That's crazy.
To eat is the number one, but also to check Facebook, to leave work and go to a movie, to have sex with the person who works in the cubicle next to us. These are inappropriate impulses, so we rein them in, and that takes effort. That takes effort. Checking email, because making decisions is a big one. So, going through an email inbox is like, do I care? Am I responding? Reply to one, reply to all, folder it, delete it, save it, reply now, reply later. Like there's all these decisions that go into processing email. And after 15 minutes of that part of the brain is just shot. Another one is emotional regulation, which comes up if you're sitting in traffic and people are acting like jerks. It comes up if you've got kids and you can't, say to little kids what you actually are thinking. Sometimes I'm a mom and I know that I can't give them a piece of my mind on a regular basis, or even really ever sometimes if they're not acting great. Yes. Right. I've got to rein in my emotions there, or, your boss, if he shows up with a new, toupee or something. So, so emotional regulation. Also, task performance monitoring. So imagine you're a teacher and you've got to do your attendance roster, and it's careful work, or any kind of careful work in an Excel spreadsheet, or giving a public talk and making sure you don't say too much. All those things shoot your willpower. So you emerge. And then the other thing is that part of the brain, the anterior cingulate cortex, is highly sensitive to glucose fluctuations. So if your glucose has tanked, that part of the brain slows down to a crawl and it can't support you anymore. So you're checking email, too long has gone by, your blood sugar's dropped, and now the vending machine is suddenly, an option where it's really not part of your strategic plan for the month of the year to frequently visit that vending machine, but suddenly you find yourself doing it. And,
absolutely.
And of course your brain talks you into that being a good idea. That's the way the brain works. So it's important to understand this willpower gap and to realize that if you're going to succeed, you have to be super clear about how you're going to bridge that gap, because that gap can show up all day, any day, at any time. So you have to have a consistent system for getting past that sort of pothole that shows up in your road all the time.
And especially at night, right? That's the most important thing. 8 p.m., 9 p.m., 10 p.m., 11, midnight. It's like, the race to the pantry for me, these flax chocolate brownies, like I can eat a dozen. Totally. Within 15 minutes. Like I will wolf them down, and I won't even feel guilty till about an hour later. And then I'm like, oh, I cannot believe I did this.
Yeah.
So
totally. For some people, 3 or 4 in the afternoon is already late enough in the day that sort of depletion has built up. Some people, even after like the morning stretch of work, and by lunchtime, they're ordering stuff that they didn't plan to order. But yes, it's true that not always, but in general, sleeping will replenish your willpower reserves. So you might, a lot of people experience like, I can get through breakfast pretty well. And then, but not necessarily if you've got bad habits of swinging by Starbucks or Dunkin' Donuts or fast food place, those will, that's not really the willpower gap. That's unhealthy habits. That's a different issue. But
that's the smells and the sight. If I go into Starbucks saying I'm just going to get my steamed almond milk, but then there's all these delicious looking things and my stomach growls and it's like, oh, fine, today, just today, I'm going to do this. So it's also,
it could be that if you end up at a Starbucks, it could also be a habit that
that's
based
true.
on time of day and location cues, your car could drive through drive-thrus because of previous experience wiring your brain.
Exactly. All right, well, I can't wait to dive into how each and every one of us can make sure that this willpower gap isn't what's holding us back.
Totally.